today, one of the people that gave in Mashke was Reb Shimon Goldman, because of tonight that there is a Malava Malke of his Gemilas Chesed fund, the Gemilas Chesed Shemri Shabbos. As it's customary in previous years, that it used to be the same custom by his father-in-law, Rabbi Yochanan Gordon, Olav Shalom, that when they go over to the Rebbe with Mashke, the Rebbe asks them to tell a story, to put on a streimel and tell a story. And so he did today. And he told the story of Reb Nachum Chernobyl. And he related this story in the presence of the Rebbe and everyone during the Farbrengen. That Reb Nachum Chernobyl had a specific city where he used to travel to once a year. And every time he came to the city, he would stay in the house of a specific person. Once, before Reb Nachum came to that city, Reb Nachum notified the individual that he will not stay at his house. Not only that, but he's forbidding this person to come to any of the tishon, to any of the, like, farbrengens, which Reb Nachum will have. He should not be present at any of the davenings, which Reb Nachum will be present while he will spend in that town, unless this individual comes up with a contribution of 2,000 rubles for the charity fund of Reb Nachum. The Yid got this message. You could imagine what the Yid felt like. He was a poor Yid, didn't have the first ruble to put down on the table to accumulate the 2,000. So he and his wife immediately decided they will sell whatever they possess, so that they could put together the amount of the 2,000 rubles. It seems like they were unsuccessful. They didn't even get half of the amount. They were barely able to put together, after selling whatever they had, all pieces of jewelry and anything else of any kind of value which they owned, and they merely put together 700 rubles. Reb Nachum Chernobyl arrived in town and did not go to the house of this Yid, and again sent a message to the Yid that he does not want him to come to any of the tefillahs or to any of the tishon, which is like when Reb Nachum is heading a tish, a Hasidische Farbrengen. He does not want this Yid to be present. Reb Nachum spent a while in town. Obviously was there for a few days or a week. And then he sent an additional message to this Jew. Sent him a message that when the entire town will go and express farewell to Reb Nachum and walk him to the end of the town, this Yid shouldn't even be present there. So we could imagine what this person felt like. He was such a close chassid to Reb Nachum, and here Reb Nachum comes to town and comes out with such a decree. We can imagine how hurt this individual was. Period of time passes, and in those days there were soldiers, government soldiers that would be traveling from town to town. And a group of soldiers arrived into the city. Custom in those days was that every few soldiers would be assigned to another home where they would stay. And naturally the Jewish homes in town were amongst it. Amongst the group of soldiers as they were traveling, there was always the group of the soldiers, the few of the soldiers who had with them the bag of the treasury. In other words, they had all the expenses which they took along with them for these trips as they were going from city to city. And in this particular Yid's house, where Reb Nachum used to stay, there were also a few soldiers put up to stay in his house. The group of soldiers received a sudden command that they have to leave town suddenly, earlier than their schedule was. So, in a mood of rush and haste, so those few soldiers who had the treasury bag with them forgot it. Where did they forget it? Those soldiers stood in the house of Reb Nachum's chassid, and they forgot it and left it in the home of that chassid. After they traveled a bit out of the city, it dawned on them that they left a bag with thousands and thousands of rubles in it. So they went back to the city to search. So they won't go from one house to another house. They were strangers in the city, so they really couldn't identify the house which they were in. So they looked in the house before Reb Nachem's, and they looked in the house behind Reb Nachem's, and they looked in the house after Reb Nachem's. Reb Nachem's chassid. But the Hashgacha Pratis led that it did not dawn on them to recognize that they stood in the house of Reb Nachem's chassid, and to go in and make a search there. After they left, and a short period of time passed, the chassid walks over to the bag, and full with a feeling of joy, the first thing that he does is he counts out 2,000 rubles. Before he does anything else, leaves the rest of the bag, gets onto a wagon and travels to his Rebbe Reb Nachem. Travels to his Rebbe Reb Nachem to give him the 2,000 rubles. So Rebbe sees him, so Rebbe says, listen, I'm going to explain to you why I acted so strange a while ago when I visited your city. And he tells him, you should know, I saw in heaven that you are going to be awarded with riches. The only thing that was lacking, you did not demand it. You did not ask for it. And you have to ask for it very, very strong. And when you ask for it and you demand it very strong, then the Rebbe gives. So that's why I put you up into such a position where you were in dire need, searching for 2,000 rubles. If I wouldn't have put you into such a position, you would never look for it, or it never bothered you. So years would have passed and you would have never asked the Rebbe for it. But when you realized that I'm requesting and I'm demanding the 2,000 rubles, so you had no alternative. And you began demanding from the Rebbe, you began asking from Hashem that the Rebbe should bless you with wealth. And here it is, it was fulfilled. This story Reb Shimon Goldman related this afternoon in the Fabringen. After he finished telling the story, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe has an expression when he has a very strong question in a Rashi, he uses the expression, it's a klotz kashe, it's a firm question. The Rebbe says he has a very firm question on this story.
Obvious question.
And the Rebbe says the story is a very nice one. The beginning of the story is nice, and the end of the story is nice. However, the Frierdiker Rebbe has taught us that when we relate a story, we have to relate it with its fullest accuracy. Because sometimes, if we don't, there are certain points in a story when they're not related accurately that ruin the entire story. The same the Rebbe says is in this particular situation. Reb Nachem Chernobyl was known as a tzaddik, outstanding tzaddik. Reb Nachem arrived into a city, and you want to tell me that Reb Nachem was in a city and was torturing, kind of like torturing this individual for all the days that he spent in the city, and that person should be sitting at home and shedding tears, as the Rebbe used the expression, shedding chasidische tears, for the fact that he can't get close to his Rebbe. It's hard to believe that this is how Reb Nachem acted. Especially we know the greatness of Reb Nachem's answering Amen Yehishmei Rabba. There's a story related that Reb Nachem was overweight. And the reason for it is, not from eating, he had such a joy responding to Amen Yehishmei Rabba that the joy of answering Amen Yehishmei Rabba gave him satisfaction that he became fat because of that. So we're talking about such an individual. So Reb Nachem is going to see to it that a chassid who he knew the closeness of this chassid. And he's going to say that for an entire period of time that he is in the city, that chassid can't come into his midst, and that chassid is not even allowed to bid farewell when the entire Stadt, when the entire city is gesegnet and sich is saying goodbye to Reb Nachem. Obviously the Rebbe says the contents of the story is true. The only thing is, the message of Reb Nachem must have been that for the first day, or perhaps for the first Tefilah, for the first davening, which Reb Nachem will daven in town, that person would be prohibited to come. However, it's hard to believe that from additional Amen Yeheshmei Rabbos to answer together with Reb Nochem, as just mentioned how dear Amen Yeheshmei Rabba is to Reb Nochem, Reb Nochem will hold back a Yid from coming to him. So the Rebbe concluded, the beginning of the story is true, the end of the story is true. However, the fact in the middle, that Reb Nochem spent a long time in the city, and the entire time he didn't let the individual come into any of his davenings, or to any of his tish, or even to come say goodbye, this, the Rebbe says, was probably not so, and it is just that Reb Nochem was able to, because Reb Nochem was able to arouse Agmas Nefesh. In other words, he was able to arouse that this person should feel bad, that he can't come close to Reb Nochem, even by not allowing him to come for one tefillah, for one davening, and that would have aroused, broken that person more than enough, that he should feel bad that he can't be together with Reb Nochem. Rebbe concluded that he hopes by him criticizing the story that it will have no effect on tonight's Melava Malka. On the contrary, everybody should go to the Melava Malka and contribute nicely. He says, because to take care of his fee, the Rebbe says that he removed such a strong kasha on this story. Therefore, he hopes, the Rebbe says, that the person who told the story is definitely forgiving him. He's asking publicly mechila, slicha, forgiveness from this individual, from Reb Shimon Goldman, who told the story. Rebbe says, and that everybody should answer, expressed himself, that everybody should answer Amen on his asking for the forgiveness, and again, that everybody should take part in the Melava Malka and contribute nicely towards this fund, and he just meant that the story should come out clearly as the story should sound.